Sleepless, Chapter 4, 11 Days Remaining. May 11th, 5:05 a.m. It isn't until Rigi is getting ready for school that Lita is discovered. Rigi calls for his mother. This is the second time in 2 days that Rigi has had to do this. Lita is rushed to the hospital. Dr. Sue and Dr. Tinsma, as well as 4 others, work swiftly on the child. Tinsma explains, as they work, she is experiencing TTS. Dr. Sue calls out, was she given Simajiyapep? Tinsma explains, yes. One of the other doctors asks as they enter the emergency room, what was the cause of the reaction? Tinsma replies, unknown as of yet. Rigi stands in the waiting room as his mother is treating his sister. Jin Kogatana had witnessed the commotion and had laid chase to see what is going on. Jin is dressed in his school uniform. Rigi, on the other hand, is a mess, having followed his sister and his mother dressed in nothing more than his flannel pajamas and tank top. Jin stands shoulder to shoulder with his classmate. What is going on? It takes Rigi a few seconds to collect his thoughts. Ultimately, he fails to keep his calm. Rigi grabs Jin and starts to weep. Something's not right, man. People are sick. My sister is sick. Ray is dead, and how does a 14-year-old suffer multiple organ failure? Jin is colder than ice. Stand up straight, he commands. Rigi takes a breath and tries to quiet his thoughts. He nods with a weakened whimper. Yeah, keep cool. Jin places a hand on the back of Rigi's head, pulling him in close to whisper, I heard Hanzo-san talk at the temple. Ray didn't die. Ray was killed. Maybe the person that killed Ray knows how your sister got sick. Rigi shakes his head, not understanding at first. What do you mean? Jin plays detective for a moment. Wednesday, Ray goes missing. Thursday, he's dead. Friday, Lita is sick. I think there's a connection, don't you? What is the connection? Rigi is calm. Jin, lost in fantasy. Rigi is getting sucked in. First place I think we should look is the lumber yard. After school, you, me, Odette, we'll go talk to Mr. Mazumo. Rigi asks for clarification. Mr. Mazumo? Ray went missing right after we met Eve, right? Jin looks determined. Rigi nods along. Yeah? We can meet up at Oso's place. Jin cuts Ray off. After school, we meet at the park near the temple. Jin explains. I don't want my father or Hanzo-san involved until we know more. May 11th, 7:45 a.m. Oso walks into Riko's house down on the beach. Oso has his chest bound, his back garbed, and a flowering robe adorned with Kitsune One print. Oso has tied his hair back and shaved the top of his head, leaving only his ponytail intact. Oso has 3 swords strapped to his obi. Oso has become a strange sight to behold. Even in this village, a day's walk from the next town, Oso has stepped backwards in time. He has become Ronin. Riko slides open his bedroom door, hardly awake enough to understand his surroundings. At first, all he registers is the shadow of a swordsman in his doorway. Riko picks up a hammer from a nearby table and flips it about, demonstrating his competence. Oso draws his sword and drops to his knees. He spins the blade, laying it to rest across the sleeve of his garment as he bows his head. Jetsun, I ask you, give me your honor and your blessing. Clean my blade, make it ready for war. So should I meet man or beast in the road that lay ahead, my steel may bend, and my enemies break. Riko's eyes become clear. He lowers his hammer to his side. I will make your sword clean, and I will make it sharp, so that even the kami may be cut. But I have no idea of this war you are talking. Riko takes Oso's sword. He flips it around, looking at the engram. This Hanzo stamp. This blade was forged back when my family and yours were one. He then spins the blade back the other way. Shogun steel. This sword was blessed by the Landmaster. With one swing, it killed 3 pigs. When this blade was new, it would have been the most beautiful blade that I had ever laid eyes on. The edge is warped. The glisten has faded. I will see to it that this blade shines. Riko piles coals onto the flames. He tends to the bellows. The furnace is stoked. Red light brings illumination to the darkness. Oso sits and stares with all his might. His anger infused to the heating metal. The booze gone from his veins. All that remains is emphatical purpose. What evil brews in the heart of this man? Hours pass. The hammering of steel becomes like the beating of drums. Sweat, steam, burning iron. Strength, power, the grinding wheel, painting oil. This is how a blade is forged. This is how a life is taken. When the blade is restored, Riko places it back in Oso's care. If I hear about you doing anything stupid with this, you and I are never going to talk again. Oso bows. He returns the sword to its home on his hip. My honor has been soiled. I must restore it with the blood of monsters. Riko looks concerned. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. Haven't you seen it? Oso stands tall. The ground under our feet, sickened. Corruption spreads to us in our sleep. The kami told us yesterday. Oso hides a hand in his fist. Buddha, give me vengeance, or give me glory. I care not which. Riko punches the wall alongside him as Oso turns to leave. You're scaring me, old man. This talk about Buddha and kami. Last time you talked like this, I found you swinging from a tree. I don't want to be the one to cut you down again. Oso offers a friendly glance. Then grab your courage. I'm gonna go climb the mountain. Look for the animal that hurt my boy. Riko wipes his hands clean as he shakes his head angrily. You are foolish. But if you insist on running into the woods, sword in hand, you're going to need someone by your side. Oso lowers his eyes in gratitude. Thank you, Jet-san. May 11th, 3:30 p.m. Luigi waits outside the school. He crosses the street to the park and kneels down in front of the 3 tanukis. He rubs his hands together and digs around his pockets. He finds a pack of gum and opens it. He gives a piece to each of the raccoon statues, then takes one for himself. Offer me safe travels, Baku. He bows to the effigies. Jin looks down the road behind himself, then back to Rigi as he approaches. How did you get here so fast? Class is let out less than 5 minutes ago. That's easy. I didn't go to my 8th class, Rigi explains. Odette comes running after them. She slaps Jin across the back in greeting. She then freezes and looks between the two of them. Why do the two of you look so sour? Have menstrual cramps or something? Jin places his hands in his pockets. He then nudges off in the direction of the church. We need to get moving. We have miles to travel and not a lot of daylight left. Lita is sick, Rigi explains. So, where are we going? Odette questions. Jin explains. Mazumo Mill. As they start to walk, Riji asks, "Hey Jin, how'd you get that green coat you have? I like it." Jin expresses, "Get your GPA up to 3.88, then join Honors Club." The road leading up to the mill is old and crumbling. The heavy rain over the last several weeks has caused clay under the roads to erode. The pavements slant and crack. It will take some time to clean up this mess. The old-growth forest around the mill is leveled. The grounds have not been adequately worked. Even with the trees gone, the land is barren. The mill stands a lonely structure, a graying tower of wood and stone in desperate need of care. Riji comments, "Is this the right place? Does this look lived in?" Odette looks back to Riji as he has fallen back to the end of the group. "I don't see any other lumber yards." Riji questions, "Honestly, when was the last time the train stopped here? Or has anyone seen any trucks driving down this road recently?" Jin shakes his head. "I don't know." The kids approach the structure. They push open the door to reveal a room filled with rusted tools. Flies swarm violently. Cracks in the wood leave striped shadows on the walls. A log sits on the belt half cut. A spider's nest ties tightly around the saw blade, as if to jam the blade. Jin whispers with his friends, "So, this is where Massimo lives?" Odette walks around the rusty room. She points. "There's a ladder over here." She looks up to a small box of a room, hidden off to one side. "Any idea what would be up there?" Riji comments, "Observation deck?" Riji grips the ladder and shakes it. "Want me to take a look?" Odette nods and waves him forward. "After you." Jin walks around to the window that lumber is lowered from after getting cut. He freezes, looking down at a broken section of floorboard. He kneels down as he pulls a flashlight from his belt. He looks into the hole, struggling to make out what is underfoot. A coppery scent accosts him as the light off the flashlight is being reflected back. "What is that?" he whispers. Riji gets to the top of the ladder. There's a tiny bedroom. A large toy chest with the lid open, showing off a collection of puppets. Another corner of the room has a net of stuffed animals mounted in it, lovingly organized. But the bed itself has something far more unearthly to share. A cocoon, 3 feet long, 2 feet wide, split open as if it had recently birthed a butterfly. Anemic fluids cling to the mouth of the nest, having yet to evaporate thanks to the shadows of the room. Riji stares frozen in fear as he tries to understand the thing he is looking at. Riji loses his grip on the ladder. He falls off the ladder and he lands with a terrible crash. Odette picks him up. "Riji, are you okay?" Riji is shaken. He points to the door. "It's time to leave. It's time to leave." When he fell, he suffered several deep cuts from splintering wood, and no doubt he is bruised in awful ways. But physical pain means little to him at the moment, as the sight of the human-sized cocoon is solely too horrifying to be ignored. May 11th, 5:45 p.m. Odette, Jin, and Riji make their way to Jin's house. Only once there does Riji notice that he is hurt. Riji explains what he had seen. His friends believe him. Nothing about what they had seen seems right. Jin calls his father, explains to Joe what they had done. It takes some convincing. But Jin talks Joe into picking him up so the two of them can go back and investigate deeper. Massimo is a monster. Jin knows it. As the two drive, Jin gives directions, but quickly things start to look out of place. Heavy construction equipment fills the clear-cut fields. The tower that is the sawmill is painted a deep red with white outlines. A dozen trucks are parked waiting to be loaded. It's not the most lively of places, but is many times more alive than it was simply a few hours ago. Father and son step out of the car side by side. Joe offers Jen a disapproving gaze. Jen responds with wide-eyed confusion. The two approach the front door to the mill. Joe knocks on the door. Quickly the door is pulled open by a straggly-looking man. Joe steps back in shock. "Sura Santo?" Joe exclaims. The old man cleans his hands off on his coat. "Sura Santo lives on the other side of the river. I'm Mazumo." Joe collects himself. "Of course," Joe bows. "I'm Constable Kogatana." Mr. Mazumo looks back and forth between Joe and Jin. "May I be of assistance, Constable?" Joe questions. "Are you the father of Eve Mazumo?" Mr. Mazumo shakes his head. "No. My son is named Higuru. He's her father. I'm her grandfather." Eve comes running to the door to see what's going on. "Jin!" she shouts. Jin is shaking his head in disbelief. "Nothing is the way it should be right now." "Papa-san, can we invite them in?" Eve asks. Mr. Mazumo nods. "We just had a major equipment failure. I sent everyone home, so I see no harm in it." Mr. Mazumo sidesteps to let the two of them in. The mill is not modern, but it is well maintained. The saw itself looks like it must be close to 100 years old. The walls are adorned with dozens of woodworking tools. The place is freshly painted and smells of motor oil. Jin questions, "Is it just the two of you here?" Mr. Mazumo confirms, "Has been for years. Ever since my good-for-nothing boy turned away from Buddha." Joe cuts in, "Go on." "Higuru was once devout, just like all of us. But then he had some crackpot idea about how Buddha and Moses were brothers. He wrote this book about it. Next thing we know, here comes the Templeton Institute giving him 100,000 yen, paying him to do a 12-year tour of all the biggest archaeological sites around the world. He had brought Yuri and Eve with him, but Eve wanted to come home to her old man." He grins. Eve grabs Jim by one arm and runs over to the ladder that goes up to the next floor. "Come on, let me show you my room." Jin is pulled by the surprisingly strong little girl. At the top of the ladder is a pristine small room. Stuffed animals line the bed. The toy chest overflows with puppets. A tiny stage has been assembled to do a marionette show within. There's no dresser and no clothes visible lying around. Jin examines the room with the utmost interest. Eve picks up a few of her puppets. She hides under the stage to do a demonstration for Jin. Jin has little choice but to sit and watch. Eve starts to tell a story with her toys. In a faraway place, there were many butterflies, but the garden was large, and wasps and mosquitoes and spiders invaded the garden. The garden got sick. A beautiful monarch amongst the butterflies grew afraid. She came up with a plan to protect the other butterflies. She found a rock, and she laced it with seeds that had been dripped in the blood of the queen. But the king of mosquitoes saw what she was doing. The king went to the oldest of all things, the millipede. The king mosquito was clever. He found the seeds of the butterflies, and he hid within his seeds. The queen of the butterflies knew nothing of this. She sent the rock off into the never, through the great mist and across the void. Then the queen slept, for now that her children would never know the pain and fear that she lived with. The blood of the mosquitoes mixed with the blood of the butterflies. Through this magic of the never, they became as one. A new beast, tall and proud, fine and beautiful, but nothing like it had ever been. And now, a new monarch has grown from the ground. She brings with her new power, the power to take others in her embrace and fill them with the love that is her. But the land that they live in, it is young and it is lonely, so the queen must sleep, wait for the world to mature, ready it for her love. After all, mice and horses make poor subjects. The queen in her sublime dream, what sort of people will she meet when she awakes? Will they love her the way that she loves them? The queen slumbers. A new garden grows around her. Then a boy comes to her garden. She shows her favor to the boy. She takes him in her embrace. Great and powerful, the matriarch of butterflies tells the boy, I need and want you to love me. The boy then tells her, You have asked for this, so I will do it for you. And she says unto the boy, Because you have done this for you, I shall give you a gift. The queen from beyond the stars has powers she is willing to give. When the queen grows sick or old, she discards her skin, and underneath reveals a younger self, one from before she became old or ill. She takes the boy and gives him her tongue, then says to the boy, You now have my power. Should you ever be unwell, take off your skin, and you will be well. But butterfly magic, it seems, the boy cannot mimic, and so he grows old, and his body turns to dust. Then this brings pain to the queen, and she cries for the boy, and then it rains. The rain washes away the dust of the past, and reveals the seed of rebirth hidden inside the clay. Then she bites her hand, and lets her blood drip onto the seed of rebirth, and the boy comes back. Now he too is a butterfly, and all is right, except the boy is confused when he awakens, and he hurts the queen. The queen falls to the ground, her wings broken, and now the boy cries. He does not understand. The way of the butterfly is not like the way of the boy. He does not understand that the queen cannot die. She can only sleep. And when she awakes, she will discard this old body and have a young one again. The boy runs to the trees, vanishing into the blackness of the garden. And then the queen awakes, and she cannot find her boy. But the queen has special sight. Her eyes can see far. Her ears can hear well. She spreads her wings and takes to the sky. Her wings turn day into night, and now all things can be seen. The queen flies into the garden, knowing everything that will happen as she sleeps. The voice of Joe Kokotana shatters the air. Boy, come here! Jin holds up his hand to Eve, asking her to wait. Jin slides down the ladder to his father. Joe grabs Jin by the arm and pulls him outside. Mr. Mazumo questions, Is everything okay, Constable? Joe explains, We'll need to continue our conversation later. Joe freezes for a moment, looking at the inside of the door, noticing something wrong with the wood. The latch from the inside is missing. There is no bolt to hold the door shut. The only thing that could have kept this door is if a board had been laid across it to pin it closed. I recommend that you start locking your doors at night. There may be a killer on the loose. Mazumo nods. Won't you stay for a drink? I have sake. I'll give you a call. Joe pushes Jin outside. Mazumo pushes the door shut, locking it with an audible click. Joe and Jin approach the car before they get in. Joe looks up and down the street. He is sweating. He wipes his face on his sleeve. Stop, he orders. Jin freezes in place. Look around you. Do you see a phone line or a radio tower from where you're standing? Jin shakes his head. Do you hear a generator running? Jin shakes his head. Is there any evidence of a power line going into that shack? Joe points at the mill. Jin shakes his head. That's what I thought. Joe opens the door. Now get in. May 11th, 6:45 p.m. Joe, as they drive, picks up his phone, making several calls in quick succession. First, he calls home. He orders Jin's mother to stay home and keep Riji and Odette with her. Then he calls his office. He tells Deputy Otsu to stand guard at his home. Then Joe calls Tenzma at the hospital. He orders her to meet them at the doors. He explains he is on his way. Jin is trying desperately to catch up. He doesn't understand what is going on. He is still confused about the very appearance of the mill, let alone anything that happened in it. Dad, what is going on? Jin is just short of shouting. You told me the mill was dilapidated when you were there, right? Joe asks. Yes, Jin replies. But it wasn't when we arrived together. Joe inquires. Apparently not. Jin shakes his head in frustration. Were there lights in the mill? Joe sputters. I think so. Jin is unsure. And where did the lights come from? Jin has no answer. The place was illuminated. But he doesn't recall any lamps or any other light fixtures. Was he not paying attention? Or were there none to be seen? Joe notices the hesitation. Then you saw the same thing I did. Joe goes on. Do you know what I think? The question is rhetorical. I think we've been drugged. And one or both of us are hallucinating right now. Which of us? Jin asks. Joe replies. Can you solve the problem of hard solipsism? Jin shakes his head as he thinks. All reality must be run through the filter of experience. If the brain is articulate matter, then thoughts, feelings, memories are chemical reactions that can be manipulated with sufficiently advanced technologies. With this problem in existence, it becomes impossible to rule out the possibility of reality itself being artificially altered. This hypothetical, stretched out to its logical most extreme, would mean that all of reality could be false memory. This being understood, for evidence to be considered evident, we must assume that there are shared experiences. The world we are in, even if it is simulated, must have rules that are constant. Joe nods approvingly. You and I are going to see Tenzma. I had to know if what I saw was real or not. Jin looks to his father. And what did you see? Joe fails to reply. May 11th, 9:10 p.m. Takeshi walks up and down the length of his office, a fistful of papers in hand. He reads over medical charts and shuffles backwards several pages, comparing it to another. After staring blankly at the pages for some time, he nods to himself. Takeshi reaches into his coat, pulling out a pack of cigarettes. The doctor falls into his chair, then picks up the phone, calling down to the records office. The call is short and to the point. Moto, he questions as the other line gets picked up. Can you run a scan of the town records? I need to know when the last time anyone in Shinsamaru was treated for Kato disease. With that out of the way, he changes over lines to call another department. He postpones this action when there is a knock at the office door. Shizuki Tenzma walks in. She sets a folder on the desk. Takeshi picks it up. He opens the folder, examining it. Dr. Tenzma, I want a blood test done on everyone that passes through the door starting tomorrow. Tenzma tips her head questioningly. That is somewhat untraditional. Does this include our staffing? Takeshi nods. Everyone. He starts to roll up the sleeves of his coat, starting with me. And what is it we are testing for? Suzuki asks. Trypanosoma. Suzuki replies. Trypanosoma? Sue leans back in his chair and waves one hand dramatically. Think about it as a contagion. A residue left behind by bug bites. Tenzma replies. We are looking for saliva. Takeshi nods. With a potentially very dangerous combination of enzymes in it. As you wish, Doctor, Tenzma expresses. But this could be costly to us in the long term. We'll let somebody working in the offices deal with that. Takeshi jokes. The radio on the desk clicks. Dr. Sue. Dr. Len is on line 6. Tenzma dismisses herself to gather tools. Takeshi picks up the phone. Shinsamaru First Medical Center, Dr. Tsu speaking. Light Len does not let Takeshi finish introducing himself before she starts to talk. Dr. Tsu, The sample that you had sent to Atori was contaminated with an irradiated microviral substance that is self-replicating and mutagenic. I advise you contain or destroy any remaining samples of this at once. Say again, Takeshi requests. You have an uncontained supervirus in your lab. Contain it. Takeshi drops the phone. He runs out of the office, tripping over a table on the way, and bounces off the wall as he dashes through the hospital halls. Of all the things that can be in a lab, a contaminated specimen is one of the things you least want laying around. May 11th, 11:05 p.m. For the first night in many nights, the sky is clear and the air is crisp. Nagumo walks through the garden of the temple atop the hill. He turns his eyes to the sea only to witness the unforeseeable. A cargo tanker has veered off course. The massive steel ship is on fire as it barrels across the sea and into the mouth of the river. The 40-foot-tall Goliath of a ship smashes through 3 of the bridges that connect the east and west banks of the town. As it partly pushes up onto land, it knocks over Rico Jet's house, then inches its way ever so slowly upstream until it is fully beached and lodged itself inside the wall that rests at the foot of the monastery. Nagumo stares in disbelief for some time as he is looking down at the burning ship. People from all over town leave their houses to come and observe the disaster. Fire teams and EMTs gather to search for injured and extinguish the flames spewing from the vessel. The ship is the Changshi. This boat has been lost since the 1970s. No one is looking for it anymore. The hull is melted from salt. The crew is long since dead. This can only be described as a ghost ship. What can possibly have pulled it up from the depths? How can it have run ashore in this tiny town, up such a narrow river? A Scot or an Irishman would call this devilry. The Buddhist can only call it the machinations of kami. Stalwart men work through the night to contain the flames. Once the fire has vanquished, Nagumo gathers the monks to mount the ship in search of the injured. A hopeless mission, but brave men will do what brave men must. The remains of the crew of the Changshi are found deep in the bowels of the ship, gathered around the furnace, having been brought low with blade and pistol in hand. Warriors, all of them, doing battle under the captain's command. A horrifying evil having descended onto them. The waters sucked from their veins, reduced to salt-bathed skeletons. A chattering fills the air. The buzzing of flies echoes deafeningly for only a split second before a voice from the shadows calls the darkness back into hiding. Not that one. That one belongs to me. The ageless, sexless voice commands. Toby kneels alongside Nagumo, looking at one of the fallen men. Who are they? Nagumo studies the markings on one of the men's coats to the best of his abilities. They're Chinamen, mercenaries. If the pin on this man's coats are to be believed, the crew of the Changshi had been slain by pirates. Then someone else slew the pirates. Tomy takes a sword from one of the dead, playing with it. Who or what do you think did this? Nagumo pushes up his glasses. We will know soon enough, I fear. He looks at the 3 brothers, Tommy, Toma, and Toby. Fetch the constable. This will require much explaining. He looks down. We will need to dress the dead. As the monks leave, Shinigami fade into reality. She sits with her legs folded, her umbrella pulled across her face. I think thanks are in order. Nagumo looks at the phantom. And what am I thanking you for? I have chosen not to let you die today, the monster explains. Instead, you've killed these men, Nagumo questions, and leveled miles worth of our village. Nagumo holds his arms out questioningly. What has happened that has called this wrath unto us? My children have misbehaved, nothing more, the ghost explains. Nagumo, you assume that evil actions serve evil purpose. It doesn't. It is nothing more than the nature of the universe, the nature of God. All things crumble to ashes, all things burn, until such time that there is simply nothing left, at which point even the mightiest reach their arms into the heavens and await to be reaped. Then I will harvest them too. Negaba squints. And still you feel the need to play games? How strange that a beast with no need for space nor time still has a need for entertainment. I would imagine that such things, like you seem to be, would be above such triviality. Nekoba, the spirit calls. Once again, you stand at the crevice. A choice, soon, you'll be asked to make. Are you sure you feel no fear? If you wish to claim my soul, there is nothing I can do to stop you. I could try to outrun you with tonics and herbs, but in the end, I will still be wallowing on the floor, clenching my chest, struggling for that last breath. There is no need for fear of the Reaper. I only hope that when I die, the process is expeditious. The phantom kicks its legs and leans forward onto its stomach, as if it thought it was a child leaning forward awaiting the end of a story. Said Kura, what if I told you it doesn't need to end that way? I would ask what other option is there, the monk replies. What if I could discard that weakness, sickly skin, and go back in time instead? There's a long pause as Negwa thinks. I would be interested. I would also want to know at what price. The skeleton begins to laugh.